Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is local and state issues here in the state of Tennessee. You can follow my podcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, TuneIn, and Alexa. Just search for the Charles Cook Podcast on any of those platforms. You can follow on all of them. Like and subscribe, and you'll be notified when I upload new content. Today, my guest is Danielle Goodrich from the Johnson City Freedom group up there, and they're in partnership with Tennessee Stands. So welcome, Danielle, excuse me, and tell us about your organization and kind of how y'all got started.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Charles, and hi, everybody. So my name is Danielle Goodrich, and I typically tell people that I started advocacy during COVID, that COVID kind of opened my eyes. However, I'm going to give you the whole backstory. So there's a group of us, and you're going to know some of the names that I'm gonna tell you. So it goes back a little bit before COVID. So I have a girlfriend who our sons are the same age. They're both 10 years old now, but when they were 18 months old, she said that her son regressed into autism after his 18-month shots. So I was vaccinating my kids, didn't really ask any questions, but I started looking into it. And I was a marketing director at the time. So it didn't take me long to find that the vaccine industry does not operate by the same rules that other industries operate. And so you quickly find that really there's two ways that we, the consumer, we, the people, can help hold an industry accountable. So there's liability. If a product harms us, if it harms enough of us, we're going to sue. And that product is going to have to go back to the drawing table, come up with a better, safer product, or they're going out of business. Well, I quickly found that was entirely missing from the vaccine industry. The second way we, the people, can help hold an industry accountable is through consumer concern. It's how we make purchasing decisions. We look up consumer ratings. We see what other people are saying about the product. And if it carries a low consumer rating, then we're not going to buy it. And that industry, again, is going to have to go back to the drawing table, come up with a better, safer product, or they're going out of business. And that's entirely missing from the vaccine industry, too, because they've vilified anybody who questions it, and they've lumped them all into the category of anti-vax. It's just like election denier, just like conspiracy theorist. Yeah. You can't ask questions or you get lumped into this group. And so that was really concerning to me. And then in March of 2019, Congressman Adam Schiff, who I'm sure you know, Shifty Schiff in California, he wrote in the Washington Post a letter to big tech, and he asked for censorship of two topics, of vaccines and autism. And a lot of people didn't care because they're like, well, those two topics should be censored. But there were some of us who were paying attention already. And we're like, no, if they can censor, if you have an American politician who can censor two topics, they can censor anything. This is dangerous. This is an infringement on free speech. So then you had New York, who was removing kids' religious exemptions and kicking 20,000 kids out of school. You had California doing the same. And then in December of 2019, there was a whole group of us from Tennessee and all across the country who went to DC for a vaccine injury awareness event. Robert F. Kennedy was throwing it, Del Bigtree, and some of the names who are big now through the whole COVID thing, but they weren't big at this time. And there was a whole media blackout. Nobody even knew that thousands of people were at the Capitol because the media wasn't broadcasting it. So these were all red flags where I'm like, what is going on with this industry? And it was a lot of the people that you know, but we met with like Congressman Rowe, and we tried to tell him, you need to bring back liability to this product. I went to Syracuse University, went to a good school. I was dressed nice, pretty articulate. They treated us like we were the dregs of society for even bringing up vaccines. They treated us like, how dare you plebeians come up here and ask us for this industry to be held accountable. And then COVID hit. So all the ladies, the mama bears from Tennessee who were just in DC in December of 2019, we knew that vaccines had a 20-to-1 return on investment. And we knew, of course, they're going to go after a huge adult population in that market. What I learned was that take control of healthcare, control the people is just merely the first step to communism. There's 8 steps, but that's the first one. And so, that was just part of that puzzle. But the women who were in DC with me were Elizabeth Murphy, who
Yeah.
she started Knoxville Dissidents out in Knoxville at the start of COVID. There was Kim Edwards. She started Free Tennessee out in Nashville. She was one of the first ones to hold rallies out there saying no more lockdowns. We need to open up these businesses. And it was a successful rally. So it was a lot of us mama bears who we kind of knew what was going on because we had just seen the steps of these things happen. So I started Johnson City Freedom out here, and it started with trying to get my kids back into school, then getting masks off their faces, then realizing what critical race theory was. But through this process, I would stand out and get the news's attention. And 2 pastors showed up the first time we did it. There's only about 20 of us. Pastor Miller from Calvary Chapel here in Johnson City. Calvary Chapel, you had Jack Hibbs out in California. These are the first churches who were standing up and saying, we're not going to close our churches. The government has no authority to close our churches. And so Calvary Chapel was similar here. They were one of the first churches to open their doors. And it was when everything was shut down. We had a big freedom event at the church out here. We also did a video where we said to our representatives, listen, you're our representatives, not our rulers. And no lockdowns, no mandates, no masking. Let us, the people, decide. Let's open up because we're crushing the economy. And Gary Humble of Tennessee Stands saw that video. At the time, our group had about 700 people in it on Facebook. We're now up to about 2,000. But it was people we had never met before. But I just put together a script, and we had nurses, we had doctors, we had military people who all took a piece of the script and sent a message to our state. And Gary Humble shared it out. So then we linked up with Tennessee Stands. And we started, helping them get calls to action out locally and statewide. And we went from there. We started holding freedom meetings once a month, every first Tuesday of the month at Calvary Chapel. We linked up with Dr. Denise Sibley, she's an internal medicine doctor, and she had never seen anything like it. She's like, I've been practicing for 30 years. I've never been told by the government that I can't treat something early. And she's gone on to help thousands of people, keep them out of the healthcare monopoly out here. And because of that, she is actually has to go do a trial for her board certification to retain it in Pennsylvania at the end of next month, October 27th. She'll be on trial for her board certification. So there was a lot of us, we knew something was going on.
Yeah, let me stop you right there. And before we go forward. And so when you created, when y'all started creating your group there and organizing and pushing back against the lockdowns in Johnson City, how was that met by the local politicians and the local media and stuff up there?
Yeah, that's a long story. They, even to this day, the GOP here calls us far right, and they say that we're coming in from Nashville to take over. And we say, that's not true. We're the mama bears who stood up at the school boards. We're the people who have been standing up this whole time. We're actually doing what it says in the preamble of the party platform, right? It says that we're supposed to stand for the Constitution as binding and inflexible. We're supposed to stand for returning the rights of the families to do what they think is best. We're supposed to stand against unelected, unaccountable government. And the local GOP wasn't doing that. So somebody had to.
So you got major pushback from the party, the Republican Party itself in Johnson City.
We're still getting major pushback from the Republican Party here. And then they say, well, let's just work together, as they send out flyers demonizing our group and calling us far right and saying that we're an organization trying to come in and take over. That's not the case at all. We just want leadership who will stand for what the party platform says. It has great principles in there. We just want people who will stand for the principles in there, stand for the Constitution, stand against unelected, unaccountable, all the agencies, the ABC agencies, they're all unelected, unaccountable government. And the GOP, even though it says it right there in their party platform, they weren't the ones doing it. It was the mama bears, because we were the ones who had bear cubs in schools, and we knew somebody had to stand up for our kids.
So how did you have folks that attended school board meetings and stuff? How was that received by them?
Yeah, so we did, but there was a very small select group of us at first where we were going to all of the meetings. One of the meetings, well, there was a group here, not the group, but one of the head lawyers of the healthcare monopoly at the time was on the school board. And he would admonish us anytime we pulled our masks down. And when he was cycling off, he gets up to give a speech, takes his mask off, and says he was so overcome with emotion that he couldn't help it. But, that was one of the first rules for thee, not for me examples from the school board. Fortunately, he cycled off, but and we were actually able to flip the school board. So at the time it was more left leaning than right leaning. And fortunately we got a couple more conservatives on there. So now there's more right leaning than left leaning. So that was a help. But at the time there was just a few of us. But then when it came down to when they were going to mandate masks, we got over 150 people to show up and stand against it with signs, and the news showed up and everything. So we were successful in that. But since then I've pulled my kids out of public school because I saw there was just the fights were never ending. The mask was just the beginning. And that was just the first sign that the federal government and the Department of Education, that they were really looking to get rid of parental consent, that they think the state has ownership, that they think the federal government has ownership over your kids, and they want parents out of the way. And so it was just too big, and I pulled my kids out of public school.
So I guess what you found when all this come about, and what you really discovered, is there's really just a progressive uniparty in Johnson City, like most county governments here in the state of Tennessee. Like here in Hamilton County, we have our whole county government is ran by the Republican Party. Everybody in the county government is Republican. So I think y'all have found out that it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. It's the same agenda.
It is. And what's so frustrating is that you have people who truly identify as conservatives who just follow them, where it's like, how do you get through a couple of years of this now and you still can't see that they're not doing their job? They're not doing what the party platform says. They're not standing for the principles. I mean, here we have the university, ETSU, and we have Ballad Healthcare. The monopoly is the largest monopoly in the country. And both of those entities fund the campaigns of these Republicans, or not the entities themselves, but the leadership of those entities. And those entities are bringing in a lot of this woke Marxist agenda, and yet they're run by Republicans. And so you look at this and you're like, okay, well, why even under Republican leadership do we have this gender theory, critical race theory, queer theory, which is easy to explain how it's neo-Marxism? Why do we have this agenda coming in under Republicans, and Republicans aren't standing for it? And the reason is because that's who is bankrolling their campaigns when it comes time for re-election.
Yeah, that was what I was going to get to. If you look at most of the, especially at the state level, if you look at the folks that's donating to their campaigns and stuff, to their re-election funds, you find out that majority of that is coming from healthcare industry, and a lot of it is from out of state as well. And so we see who is controlling them. They buy the politicians by donating to their campaign, and then they'll say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with the way I vote. Yes, it does. And so we've seen that over the last few years. And one of the great things is Brandon Lewis with the Tennessee Conservative News put out his
Rhino Report.
not the Rhino report, but the one who had who contributed to the campaigns.
Mhm.
So he put that out last year, and that was really good and really eye opening to see, even that how much money from out of state influence our state elections here. So I know that you'd said something about having constitutional classes with Jeff Cobble out of Greene County. So and you also had some state reps and sheriff and people attend. So
Yeah.
your group helped put this forward. How did that go?
Yeah, so we realized that, all these elected take an oath to the Constitution. Well, how can they uphold a document that they don't understand and they can't even articulate? So, I mean, you ask most of them, they couldn't even tell you what an inalienable right was, or most of what the Constitution says, and neither could we the people. So how can we the people hold them accountable if we ourselves don't know? And so we had Jeff out and he started teaching some classes, but then we realized, we really need to get our representatives to these classes too, because Jeff is just a wealth of knowledge. He knows the Constitution, and not only that, he knows the founders' own writings, which is most important, because the Democrats try to say it's an evolving document. It's not. We got to look to the founders' own their writings and what they said, so we understand their intention. And so we had Rusty Crowe out here, Senator Crowe. He came to a 5-hour Constitution class with Jeff. We had Representative Hicks, Representative Halsey, Representative Alexander. We had our mayor. We had a mayor candidate. We had the 3 sheriff candidates, because we did a Q&A with them. The sheriff at the time stepped down, and the commission had to appoint one. And we were being asked, okay, well, who's the most constitutional sheriff? We didn't know. So we invited them to a Q&A so we could ask them the tough questions that they're not going to get asked in the media. And the last question we asked was, would you come to a Constitution class here? So all 3 of the candidates came to a Constitution class with Jeff. And we had some people from the GOP. We had a lot of the elected in the area. They all came and took a Constitution class with Jeff Cobble. So we felt, we felt like that was a great thing. And I just hope that we can continue to do it with those who are campaigning this next time around, because that's a good time to get them to commit to something like that. If you have them to a Q&A, you ask the tough questions, and you ask in front of the people, will you come back for a Constitution class? It's kind of hard to say no in front of 100 people, and when you got 300 more watching online.
Right. And another thing is doing the candidate surveys and asking those questions, and if they won't do it, then you don't support them and make them sign it. And so I like that part of getting them to do that, but it just frustrates me that, and I mentioned this in my podcast that I did, my last podcast, is we have so many people that's running for office that have no base, no principle in anything whatsoever when it comes to liberty and freedom. They don't understand the Constitution. They probably never read it, the Declaration of Independence, and it's a shame that they will take an oath to something that they know nothing about.
Yeah.
So
we toyed with the idea of potentially entering some legislation. That there's already legislation that says when the legislature becomes, when they first get into the General Assembly, that they already have to do some training. There already is training that they have to do. So we're like, okay, well, can we just add to this legislation that they also have to take a Constitution class? But what it came down to was, okay, who's going to teach it? If we could get Jeff Cobble to teach it, great, then we'd know that they're in good hands. But what happens if somebody else teaches it?
Yeah. And that's what people don't understand. Barack Obama is a constitutional attorney. So they say,
Yeah.
So
he's going to be giving you the Marxist abridged version that he's changed to fit his agenda.
Right. So, and that's, that people want to do, make all high school kids pass a civics class before they can graduate. Well, who's going to teach the civics class? You bring back teaching Bible in the schools. Well, who are you going to let teach the Bible? You know, it's a, it's
It
it's
is, but
a
I think
slippery slope.
it is, but I think the more we can have our own sovereign state education
Hmm.
system, the better off would be. The more federal dollars we can get out of the school system, the better off we'll be. And I know leadership just proposed that, but I'll believe it when I see it, if it's actually of any value, and if they actually get the federal dollars out like they say they want to, because we know the agendas in these schools. They're teaching the kids neo-Marxism. It's just rebranded. Critical race theory is just rebranded critical theory. And, as long as these kids are being taught Marxism, we're turning out more Marxists.
Right.
And, I mean, that's happening here too. And you can see the basis for it. And when it happened, you had progressives who took over the education system. You had Marxists like Antonio Gramsci, who said, that socialism is precisely the religion to overwhelm Christianity, and they're going to do it in the churches and the schools and the media. And that's what they did. And then you have Charles Potter, who's an author of progressive education, and his book was The Religion of Humanities, or Humanities the Religion. I might have that backwards, but he said, what can the theistic Sunday school do to overwhelm the 5 days a week of humanist teachings? And so, that's how they flipped the culture, is because they were able to indoctrinate our kids with Marxism, with socialism, and with humanism in the schools.
Yeah. And I may get in trouble here, but it's the sad thing is a lot of people they want to talk about who's teaching their kids and stuff in public school, but they don't even really know who's got a hold of them at church,
Mhm.
and who has an influence on them at church, and the beliefs that the person teaching them in Sunday school may have at church, and that's not a good thing. So you all had started questioning, and like with the sheriff candidates and stuff. So have y'all looked at maybe holding political forums and political debates coming up for like the school boards and the county commissions and the city council races and stuff as well?
Yeah, I would like to do that again. We actually just had one. The most recent one was for Timothy Hill's seat. So there was a
Mhm.
representative who had to step down because of a sex scandal,
Right.
and out in Johnson County. And so we held a debate here, even though we're Johnson City, because we wanted the people to hear the tough questions asked. And so we held a debate here with Stacey Vaughn and with Timothy Hill. And they were both good conservatives. And ultimately, Timothy Hill had already served. And so yeah, he had
Right.
experience, he got back in. But yeah, would like to continue to do this, because we feel like we ask questions that they're not going to get asked elsewhere. And they're the questions that really get to the meat of the issues.
Right. And I'll tell you a quick story. We had back several years ago, we had a candidates debate for sheriff here, and I mentioned this in my last podcast as well. We uh, had sheriff candidates, and they were running, and the challenger challenging the sheriff. I mean, we wasn't promoting either one of the candidates. We were trying to give the information to the public, but friend of mine said we need to put in some constitutional questions. And so the sheriff, he actually did his best to answer the questions and done a pretty good job. And his challenger passed on the questions. I mean, he literally just said, "I pass." And
Wow.
there was people there that supported him that walked out of there and said, "I cannot support somebody who can't even give an answer on the Constitution." So those things are huge. They're really important. And that's why you don't hear those type of questions from the media or the Chamber of Commerce or whoever's doing the forum. So it's really important for good conservative, liberty-minded people, not the GOP, but good conservative people, to hold those debates and open it to the public and bring them in and let them see. And, if candidate don't want to show up for it, that ought to tell you everything you need to know.
That's right. Yeah. And we do have some of that because now they know us and they know we're going to ask the tough questions. So some of them don't want to, but there is some pressure, for the ones who they want to get in front of our group. But I will say the sheriff candidate questions was very eye-opening because we opened it up to the floor so the public could ask questions. That was actually some of the, we got some more information out of that than we even expected. There was some.
Yeah.
There was some information that was exposed just from the public coming to ask questions, which I think, basically after that, because we do live streams. So we were doing live streams to YouTube at the time.
Right.
And our video, the sheriff video, got deplatformed. And so I challenged it. I knew that we had a lot of meetings that probably should have been deplatformed at the time, but that one really wasn't one of them. And so I challenged it and they reinstated it, but it begs the question, why did that one get flagged? Did one of the candidates, they didn't want people to see the result of that, and so they tried to have it taken down. But our YouTube channel eventually got deplatformed anyway, so we're over on Rumble now because we were putting out the Dr. Sibley speaks at every one of our meetings, and she's has to go before the board of internal medicine to defend her license, even though she's kept people out of the hospital monopoly here.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into one of my next questions is so do y'all have monthly meetings in Johnson City, or where do you meet? When do you meet? Fill us in on that.
Yeah, so every first Tuesday of the month. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. So I actually just got a memory from 3 years ago when we held our first outdoor freedom event. But we've been meeting at Calvary Chapel in downtown Johnson City for a couple of years now, every first Tuesday of the month. And we'll bring in speakers on Marxism. We'll do Q&As. We'll bring in speakers on a variety of different topics. I really want to get somebody in to talk about all the smart city, World Economic Forum, smart city, like what Chattanooga is up against. I've reached out to Save Chattanooga. They're a citizens group out there that's fighting having Chattanooga turn into one of the World Economic Forum cities. I really want to get a speaker out to talk about that. We have Bernadette Pager from Children's Health Defense come out. We'll have Andrea Gomez from Citizens for Renewing America come out. And we just try to, we'll have Gary Humble come out. And we try to, activate people to get more actively involved, whether it be to help review bills during the special session, help review bills during the regular session, help do local calls for action. One of the things we exposed was in Johnson City, they had a strategic plan that they put together. And I don't think anybody really looks at this stuff. And I went through it and I wrote an article called Johnson City's Strategic Plan is Lipstick on a Pig. And Brandon Lewis from the Tennessee Conservative ran it. And it caused a big stir here because they had all of the Marxist language in there. They had equity, which in policy is wealth redistribution, but they don't even know what these words actually mean in policy. It said that Johnson City wants to be one of the most equitable cities. Okay, well, what does that look like in policy?
It just sounds good.
Yeah, so we exposed all the language that was in there. They want to be one of the most diverse cities, the most inclusive cities. It was all the DEI stuff, all the Marxist diversity, equity, inclusion, which is, it's wealth redistribution, it's socialism. And so we exposed that, and I hope it's opened some eyes here. I know some of the Republicans got a little bit upset and fiery at one of the GOP meetings, and they tried to yell at us and say, that's not critical race theory. Like, that's exactly what that is, actually. It's exactly what it is. It's Marxism. So we're just, we're trying to educate people in the area and have people pay closer attention locally and statewide to what's getting through in the commissions here and what's getting through in the state legislature.
Yeah. Question. So there's always a lot of information out there. And you could have a meeting just about every day as far as the information to put out so people wake up to it. But have y'all ever done had anybody come in to help you become more effective at activism or anything like that?
So we actually just had David Seal from Empower Jefferson come out, and he was
Mhm.
talking about a lot of the activism that they do. I really wanted our GOP to see, because I think it's an excellent example of how the GOP can work together with their freedom group instead of against their freedom group
Right.
to effectively promote change. They're doing great work out in Jefferson. So they're doing FOIA requests of their schools, which is exposing that they're still teaching. Bill Lee passed a law saying that he's banned critical race theory, and they're still teaching it. So, I think just having people out that talk about the steps that they're taking, it helps us see, okay, these are actionable steps that we can take here. So Andrea Gomez, she's come out and she's spoken about similar things where she's tried to be like, okay, you can't just have infotainment, she calls it, which is you come, you sit down, you listen, you go home, you do nothing. So we try to leave our folks with a call to action every time that we meet with them. And we send out emails too. So we'll send out monthly emails from Tennessee Stands email blast. And then we'll send out weekly emails from a Washington County Freedom First email, who a lady here helps me with. But we'll put local calls for action. And if Gary or the state has some statewide action like we did during the special session, we'll put calls for action out to that. So for example, one of the calls for action we have right now, like I said, one of our bigger issues is Ballad Health, the monopoly. And we know that it's taken away choice. When you have two huge healthcare systems that merge into one, you no longer have choice. You don't have
Right.
options. It's no longer free market. And so that's something that we've been trying to help reinstate. How do we get free market back so that the people have choice? And Bud Halsey out of Kingsport, he's a great representative, a freedom-minded, forward-thinking representative, and he tried to repeal the certificate of need laws, which is what hinders competing healthcare service to come and try and succeed here. They can't without having to apply to the government, lobbied against by the monopoly, and having to spend cost prohibitive legal fees. So one of the things we thought of was we knew Carter County was really upset because they lost their ICU at their Sycamore Shoals Hospital. And they went and they testified at the COPA hearing, the Certificate of Public Advantage hearing. And there was 8 Carter County commissioners who showed up to that hearing about the healthcare monopoly, and they expressed their concern for losing the healthcare in their area. As we know, Tennessee is exploding in growth because we're getting all these people from New York, we're getting all these people from California, and Carter County is exploding in growth too. And here they are losing their healthcare. Now they have to drive to Johnson City, 9 miles away, for healthcare. So the Carter County was up in arms, and we wanted to get a group of people under the radar to go to their commission and thank them, and then encourage their bravery to the next step. So we encourage them to either do a vote of no confidence against the system, or to issue a resolution to the legislature saying that they have no confidence in the system. And our hope is that other counties will take that and that they'll repeat it. And so 20 of us showed up, 7 of us spoke. They unanimously voted to draft a resolution. And now we're trying to help them through this process because the threats are flying. The first night I got a text saying they're already threatening to revoke our ambulance grant, our $300,000 ambulance grant. And so we're just trying to encourage them through this process. And we're like, listen, Carter County, you can lead the way in some real change in this region.
Right.
And we'll try to help you through the process. So those are the types of calls for action that, our group is trying to do. There's statewide ones, but then there's ones that are more regional. And then there's ones that are more locally focused.
Good. That's one of the things that is missed a lot in these grassroots efforts is how to be really good at activism and getting things done, other than just showing up at a meeting and complaining and going home. Unfortunately, that's a lot of what happens in these groups. And that's why people get burnt out and lose interest. So when you can fight these battles and win, and it's tough to do. It really is tough to do. And but they're battles worth fighting. As you know, Don't need to tell you that, but a lot of people, when they're getting into it, they go in fighting out, trying to put out a fire, and the next thing you know, they're just worn out, and everybody loses focus and goes home. So, so you've talked about the ballot deal and stuff. So, anything coming up on the horizon that you'd like to let the public know about in the Tri-Cities area that they can be a part of, other than your monthly meeting?
Yep. So on 10/6, we're trying to get as many people to the Carter County Commission as possible, because this is when they will be they'll be taking more testimony. So if there's other people who didn't have the opportunity to share their ballot testimony before, they'll be able to share it then. And they're also looking for more guidance on the resolution language. I sent them what I thought should be included in there. But we really do want to get as many people there on 10/3 as possible. The problem is that's the date of our monthly meeting, unfortunately. So I'm telling people, if you have a valid testimony that you want heard, don't worry about our meeting. You can watch it back on Rumble. Go to the Carter County Commission and stand with them. And then they have another one. So the resolution will be voted on. It was originally on 10/16, but they've changed the date. So it's going to be voted on 10/23. And then the other local call for action for us is Dr. Ginger Carter. She's one of the conservatives on our Johnson City School Board. And she's currently fighting against the implementation of a third-party sex ed program, where Project Veritas actually just recently exposed some of these third-party sex ed programs. So on paper, they look great. They look benign. They look like, they're just doing the regular old sex ed program. But then what you find out is, like you were saying earlier, is they bring in somebody who's a radical, and the person who's the radical is who ends up teaching more of the gender queer theory and more of that Marxist propaganda. And so that's what Project Veritas exposed, was one of those sex ed programs that's doing just that. So Dr. Carter, she was asking for options. Can we have options? What about even not having a third party? Why can't we have a teacher at the school teach it and we approve the curriculum? And they made her sound like she was a silly, they even said it. They called her far right in our local paper. Because that's what they try to do. They try to paint us all as far right if we ask questions. How dare you ask questions? And so we want people to go support her on 10/2, October 2nd at the school board meeting, because she got beat up in the press here, and just for asking the right questions. And shortly after she asked the right questions was when that Project Veritas expose was released. So I'm thankful that there's people like her who are asking the right questions before things like that are released. So those are 3 calls for action. Show up. You can either come to our meeting if you don't have a valid testimony, or and that's on 10/3 at 6 p.m. at Calvary Chapel. You could go to the Carter County Commission on 10/3, 6 p.m., share your valid testimony, support the commission in the resolution. Follow that up on 10/23 and go to when they vote to pass the resolution, because we're afraid they're going to get bullied out of it. So we really want a lot of people to show up and support them.
Now, question, you said a ballot testimony. Do you have to be a resident of Carter County to speak at that meeting?
You don't. No, you
Because
can.
I know ballot healthcare is all over East Tennessee up there.
Yes, and they said that they are willing to accept testimony from any county. So any county can go and they can share their testimony, they can share their story, and they can be heard, and it can be put on the record. So that, that's one of the important things too, is anything that's heard in the commission is put on the record. So this will be put on the record. And they said when they passed the resolution, Commissioner Odom said she's going to walk it in personally to the legislature and hand it to them.
So that meeting is on 10/3, right?
Yes, October 3rd at
October
6 p.m.
3rd at 6 p.m.
at the Carter County Commission. And it's, I'm saying this off the top of my head, it's, I believe, 801 East Elk Avenue is the old courthouse.
Okay, so that's where the Carter County Commission meets?
Yes, where the Carter County Commission
is. Okay, I'm writing that down because I do know someone who may want to take part in that and could be influential in it. So I think I mentioned something about it on the phone yesterday to you. So
Yeah,
but
that would be great. I think
I
anybody who has a story to share, or what they try to say is it's complicated, right? And they try to say, oh, we can't do immediate repeal because it's going to cause all these market disruptions. But then when you ask them what the market disruptions are, they can't name any. So there's a lot of excuses, but there's not a lot of real action. So I really am proud of the Carter County Commission. This was a brave step for them.
well, the market disruption is competition. It's gonna disrupt their market, you know.
Mhm.
But competition is going to help the citizens,
Yeah.
you know, the users of it. So, we get that.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So we're coming close up here on about 45 minutes. So I will give you an opportunity here to close this out with, well, anything you want to say before and get across on this podcast before we close it out.
Yeah, I would just encourage people, I'm nothing special. The women who started the freedom groups across Tennessee, I'm good friends with them, but we're just ordinary moms. And it wasn't like we were given an extra dose of bravery or anything. We just knew that that's what we had to do. Ronald Reagan says freedom's never more than one generation away from extinction. It isn't past, it must be fought for and handed down for our children to do the same. And that's ultimately what we have to do. We have God-given rights, and our website, that's our motto, is that we are our job is to defend our God-given rights, and that's what we look to do. So I would just ask everybody who's listening, there's no wrong way to stand, really. As long as you're doing something. Go to a biblical citizenship class, go to a constitution class, learn your rights, and get other people to do the same. And then, find a way to stand in your local area, find a way to help. If you're more of the behind the scenes person, that's fine. There's ways that we have to put you to work. But I would just ask, for you all to link arms with us, and let's try to defend our God-given rights together. And you can check us out we have a website. It's Johnson City. Oh goodness, I just lost it too. JohnsonCityTNFreedom.com, and then TennesseeStands.org, and then Dr. Sibley's website is TNFreedomDoctors.org. So there's 3 ways to follow us and get linked up with us.
Okay. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening at you talk about the moms fighting.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, where in the heck are the dads?
The dads are providing the paychecks, but this is something that I ponder a lot too. So they say, the average democracy lasts 250 years. Lord Tytler said that there's phases that it goes through, right? So we go from bondage to great faith to great courage to great liberty to great prosperity, but then to great abundance and back into bondage. Yeah. So I often ponder, is that what it takes? Do you have to lose everything in order for you to have faith that leads to the great courage?
Dan Bongino, to quote Dan Bongino, how bad does it have to get your attention?
Yeah.
And I'm with him. But this is what I want to say something to the men. If you're watching this, what's it going to do to get you to fight for your family? For your wife, for your kids, to give your kids and your grandkids an America that we grew up in and loved. What's it going to take to get you to put down the golf clubs, the fishing poles, and everything to get involved in your community and fight for your family? Mm-hmm. What's it going to take? Is it going to take seeing them walk your family off in handcuffs or something because they refuse to take the vaccine or something? Mm-hmm. My question, what's it going to take, men?
Yeah.
So with that, I'll end it there, but I want you to think about that. What's it going to take for you to get involved? Danielle, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Charles. I
Stay
appreciate
on the
it.
line. Stay on the line when I finish recording here, and we'll finish this up. But we talk about our God-given rights all the time, but there's so many people out there working to take them away. In this time, I told somebody the other day, this is like the Israelites sitting around waiting for God to take care of the Philistines.
Yeah.
When are we going to stand up and become some Davids?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need. With that, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. If you're in the Johnson City area, please spread this in East Tennessee. Spread this video for people to share. And if you live in that area, turn out and see Danielle and the group up here at Johnson City Freedom. All right. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.